So, a big hello and welcome. It's Kate from Zen Stitching, and I'm super excited to be with you today for another one of our Making Zen Artist Chat series. I'm very delighted to be joining you with Liza Laird today, and she is an amazing person who, as you can tell from looking at the screen behind her, is, I would say, a knitaholic. I'm so pleased that you're here with us today because I too am a knitaholic. And what I
Yeah.
really, one of the reasons that I'm really attracted to you and what you do is you have a book called Yoga of Yarn. And
hmm
so you combine mindfulness with knitting. And so I'd
Yeah.
love to hear about your philosophy
hmm
and how you reached this point where you've decided to combine two very beautiful practices.
Yes. Yes. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. And yes, my book, Yoga of Yarn: A Knitter's Handbook for Self-Discovery. This was really born out of my love for knitting and yoga. I was introduced to knitting when I was about 8 years old, and yoga and meditation around like 11, 13 years old. And it's just over my life I've found that it's not only a great stress reducer but just something really fun that I enjoy. And I've found that I've been able to savor life more by being present, by doing yoga practices like the postures, but also bringing in yoga philosophy and acknowledging yoga is actually more of a lifestyle than an exercise routine. When I started out teaching knitting and yoga about 16 plus years ago, I it was always obvious to me in my whole life that they complement each other, the knitting and yoga, but I really started bringing them together as one class when I started leading knitting and yoga retreats. And it was through that I was really able to cultivate this idea of yoga of yarn, because knitting is meditative by nature,
Mm.
and yoga is teaching us the postures really were created to help us learn to sit and meditate. So together, when you practice both of them, it can be a really powerful practice.
I really love
Yeah.
how you've talked us through that journey because the
hmm
moment you said that the yoga exercises that we do, which we associate with yoga, but there's many
hmm
different forms of yoga, isn't there?
Yeah. hmm
Yoga exercises is just one of
Yeah.
them, and
Yeah.
there's associated with the
hmm
mindset and a
Yeah.
number of other things as well, which you
hmm
probably are more familiar with than I am.
Yeah.
I remember reading about them, so I'd love it if
Yeah.
you have a little bit of a firmer
Mhm.
philosophy and understanding of it to share it with me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, like the traditional yoga that most of us explore here in North America is more like a vinyasa yoga, where there's the flow of constant movement and postures, or hatha yoga, where again it's very yoga posture based. But within those, there's always still pieces of yoga philosophy that teachers share. But there's many different styles of yoga, from vinyasa, hatha, raja, karma yoga, and so on. I won't list all of them, but I actually do cover this in my book, Yoga of Yarn, where kind of in a tongue-in-cheek way, I share the idea that if you like hot Bikram yoga, you're going to enjoy knitting with linen, lighter weight yarns and things like that. Because just like there are many different ways that people knit, they're English knitters, continental, Portuguese, depending on the style of how you learn to knit. There are these different styles of yoga that focus on different things. Like karma yoga or karmic yoga is focusing more on offering service to others and sharing your compassion and love with the world and trying to do volunteer work and things like that. So it's not just about the yoga postures. It's taking the yoga beyond the yoga mat. And what I really like to address in my book, Yoga of Yarn, is this idea that if you can focus on the mindfulness and being present and translate that to your knitting, you can bring greater joy and ease to the craft that you absolutely love because you're kind of letting all that extra noise go away and living from a place of presence rather than reactivity, which our knitting or any stitching that we do can really benefit from by focusing on the process rather than the product. Because it's really the magic that happens throughout all the stages, not just once you finish it.
Oh, how fascinating. So in
Yep.
the book, you
Mhm.
guide people through the process of how to apply some of those principles whilst
Yep.
knitting.
Yes. Yeah. And I probably should have highlighted the page to be able to show you like where I talk about, hatha yoga, if you like hatha yoga, what you might like. But there's a wide range of things. Even I do yoga postures in the book that
Mm,
are focused just on people who work with their hands, what would help the most. Um, but the idea is I even do talk about yoga philosophy because there is a yoga called Raja Yoga that focuses on the 8 limbs of yoga, from what ethical practices you need to do to the breathing practices and how that can be really helpful. Like the yamas and niyamas in yoga talk about nonviolence is one. And so, how might we look at nonviolence as a knitter? Well, we consider where our wool is coming from, how it was processed, and how we're sharing our knitting with others, which generally pretty much every single knitter I've ever met or fiber artist has been very loving and very sharing. But that's a practice and something that we can all work on to help share this amazing craft and bring more love and compassion to the world.
Oh, I love it. And I got
Yeah.
a big grin when I was thinking about
Mhm.
practicing non-violence as a knitter because
Yeah.
I'm like, well, those knitting needles, they're pretty sharp.
Yes. Well, yes. I mean, there are those knitting mysteries when somebody gets murdered with a knitting needle, and I'm not talking about that.
No, no, we're not going there. And
Yeah.
not to mention, some airlines think that they're
Oh, yeah.
weapons.
Yes.
I hate to think how many pairs of beautiful needles I've lost just because I wanted to knit on the plane and they got
I know.
confiscated.
Yes.
One time I actually hid them in an airport knowing that I would return to that same airport. And I went and hid them somewhere and I found them. They were there. Nobody had found them or the cleaners hadn't found them. So I was
Oh my
thrilled.
gosh. Yes. Way to not lose them. Nice.
I know, exactly. But we digress. And
Yes.
thinking about what you're talking about with the holistic approach, I think and
Yep.
you're talking about the 8 limbs.
Hmm.
I was thinking maybe that's what I was thinking about because I think Ayurveda and
Hmm.
the way
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
you eat and how
Yeah.
food can affect us is also part
Hmm.
of the whole yogic tradition.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Ah,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah.
I get so excited by this thought
Hmm.
because like you say that knitting isn't a craft, it's a spiritual journey.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
fully believe that the Zen stitching that I do, it's a
Hmm.
lifestyle. So it
Yeah.
really encompasses so many things.
Hmm.
So it's really lovely to hear
Yeah.
that you're connecting your knitting with a
Hmm.
soulful journey. How
Yeah.
do you like to share that with others? I understand you like to do retreats.
Mhm. Yeah, I love to lead the retreats. They're anywhere from like 4 days to 2 weeks. Lately, they've been more the 4 day retreats, and it's just a really amazing way for a group of people who love knitting and yoga to come together and spend quality time focusing on this idea of enjoying the process and being intentional in what they're creating, intentional what they're eating, intentional with how you're moving. And it's a wonderful way to uncover this idea of knitting as a spiritual practice and yoga as a lifestyle. But I also teach smaller workshops, just at yarn shops for a couple of hours, or even I have a few online classes that offer the same thing. I have one with creativebug.com. So just any way that I can share, I try to, because it's not about me selling the book or selling a product. I'm trying to just share a philosophy with fellow fiber loving artists.
Yes, absolutely. I love hearing that in the book, you're talking about the philosophy, but you also
Mhm.
take it I was going to say a step further, but it's a
Hmm.
beautiful addition, and that is
Hmm.
including the postures
Hmm.
for people who like to sit and create, because
Hmm.
I do know that, quite often we get so engrossed with what we're doing that
Hmm.
our posture starts to slouch, or,
Yeah.
we forget to stop and look, or we just use our
Hmm.
fingers so much on wrists that
Hmm.
we end up with tendonitis and then
Yeah.
can't do anything.
Yeah.
Was there like a a a pivotal point where you thought, I've got to get this book out to as many people as possible? Like, what was the in inspiration to get your from your philosophy to writing the book?
Well, I've learned I'm a very slow writer because I'm shy to share. And I started the book like in 2009. And then I finally published it in 2022. Um, yes, but I think I finally was just like, I've been sitting on this long enough. I need to share it.
Mm,
And I want to get it out into the world. And, I've been teaching for a very long time. And I've found that especially knitters or makers, we need a slightly different yoga than what you would walk in and find in a vinyasa yoga class. I think I still practice vinyasa yoga, but there's such a power to trying some chair yoga and some gentle yoga movements, just simple things that you can do mid knitting, like just stop for a second and shake out your hands.
mm,
It's little stuff like that can revolutionize your knitting, that can allow you to knit for longer. Because as I get older, the aches and pains are coming. The knitting does start to hurt after a little while. And I really wanted to be able to share with people that you don't have to be able to touch your toes or do a headstand to be able to practice yoga. And it can be a game changer for knitters and makers alike if they start doing simple things like rolling out the wrists and stuff like that. So I just really wanted to get the message out there finally.
yeah. Oh, I love it because
So,
it's not that many people that kind of focus on exercises and
mhm,
practices for creatives. You've got,
mhm,
like you say, you've got the whole body yoga, which is important,
mhm, mhm,
or other exercises for people who like to do other things. But there's not much
mhm,
to focus on, just like the
mhm,
areas that we like
mhm,
to do.
mhm.
And like you
Yeah.
say, a lot of these things. It probably comes more with mindfulness because it's
Mhm,
shaking out your hands. That's not really very tricky to do.
mhm.
It doesn't take,
Yeah.
great force or
Yeah.
concentration or anything like
Mhm,
that. But it's just
yeah.
remembering to
Mhm,
do these things. Do
yeah.
you have any tips or tricks for people to help remember to do these things? When you get so engrossed in something, you're like, you
Mhm.
forget about everything else.
Yes, yes. Oh, I understand that completely. But I mean, for me personally, what I've found is setting a timer really can help.
Mm,
Or if I know that I'm working on a project for a certain number of hours, I'll put a Google calendar, because I use Google Calendar, a Google Calendar event in, like
mm,
stop and take a break now. And I'll even tell myself what poses to do or something like that. Um, or if I'm trying to have screen free time, I'll have little post-its that I write out and say, like, at 4 o'clock, remember to stretch or something, and or this is your meditation time. So I find it works best for me to schedule it in, because otherwise I will get completely engrossed in it, and then be in like hunched over in aches and pains.
well, that's
Uh,
it.
but but I think also what's important is I will try to remind myself before I start to be present and keep my posture right so that I don't get to that point. It's much easier now over the years as I've practiced. I focus more on having proper posture as I knit or weave or spin or whatever I'm doing, and that can help as well.
Yes, yes. Do you also have like a comfortable chair that is also supportive? So that also helps your
Mm.
posture too?
So I personally knit sitting on the floor whenever I can, because I sit up taller when I'm sitting on the floor.
Mm,
And I think it's important for makers to know what works for them, depending on what craft they're doing. because like I weave on my floor loom, and I have a special bench from Harrisville because I have a Harrisville floor loom that actually rotates as you come forward and back.
Mhm.
And that too helps me keep my core engaged and my posture because it's the bench is flowing with me as I throw the shuttle.
Mm.
And my spinning wheel, I have a special stool that was made just that I only use for spinning because I'm pretty short. I'm only 5'1", and all the stools that I like had tried were like an inch too high, which would threw off my like it kind of tightened up my hips a little bit. So I got a slightly shorter bench. So when I'm spinning, I'll sit on that. So it's kind of it depends on what craft I'm working on to keep the proper posture.
That's so great to hear. But and
Yeah,
thank you so much for sharing because
yeah,
quite often we just think at the end of the day, well, myself anyway, I was like,
hmm,
oh, I'm going to watch some TV, I'm going to sit down and knit, and you just
yeah,
like sink into the sofa, that kind of
yeah,
thing. So to just be a little bit mindful and
hmm,
maybe try sitting on the floor
yeah,
or having like a something behind you that might help with support the posture. But even
yeah,
like you say, those little things like changing
hmm,
up the height of your
yeah,
stool can
hmm,
make a difference in how you hold yourself.
yeah.
And a lot of it's
Yes,
unconscious, isn't it? So,
it is. Yeah.
mm,
Well, and it all depends on the furniture in your house. Like my husband is a foot taller than me and a lot bigger than me, so the couches often are very deep and big and great for him to sink into, but then I get completely lost in it. So then I if I do want to sit on the couch and knit, I do need to put a ton of pillows behind me and prop myself up so that I can be seated properly. So it just takes a minute or two of thought and finagling to kind of get yourself in the proper position. But it's not necessarily something you would think of right away.
exactly. But
Yeah.
I do think though, like you say, it would take a minute to just think about and be mindful of
Yeah.
again. And
Yeah.
maybe it takes a bit to find the right chair or get some
Yeah.
cushions or something like that. But that
Yeah.
short term kind of time spent putting that together is going to have
Mm-hmm.
such long-term benefits for just how you feel. And
Mm-hmm.
like you say, it kind of, you get tense throughout your body if you're sitting the wrong way or
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
holding your legs the wrong way or all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. It kind of makes me
Yeah.
think of the analogy. I'm wondering if it was Lincoln who said it, something about
Mm-hmm.
if you have an hour to chop down a tree, he spends
Mm-hmm.
50 minutes sharpening the saw, or something
Yeah.
along those lines. I know I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying that correctly, but that kind of idea
Yeah.
about where preparation is so important, which means then that the execution is so much easier.
Definitely. I love that. That's exactly
Yeah,
it.
totally. Well, I'm
Yeah.
going to try doing the sitting on the floor and
Yeah.
stitching. My
Mm-hmm.
cat gets the special spot in the house, which is my
Yeah.
used to be my favorite seat. So she gets to sit on the
Yeah.
seat, and she's got a special rug and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I've been delegated to the floor.
Yes.
And I sit on like a little raised
Mhm.
cushion that's about this
Yeah.
high, and I find just that little bit of height is helpful for me when I want to cross my legs.
Yep. Hmm.
Mm,
Whenever I sit on the floor, I always sit on something because it's so much better for the hips and the lower back to have the hips a little bit higher, and especially in even if you're sitting in a chair. Whenever chairs are made so that your hips are lower than your knees, it creates a tension in the hips.
that's
So if you're going to sit for a long time and knit, it's better to have the hips elevated just a little bit. So even sitting in a chair, putting a blanket down can help prevent the hips from over clenching.
mm,
Um, but that's also why I just love sitting on the floor. I put a little cushion down, I cross my legs, and then my spine just automatically lengthens. And this is a really good segue into the class that I'm offering, the bolster class, because this is something that I often sit on, which is just this bolster here that I made. Um, it's just one skein of hand spun yarn knit in the round with some pillow stuffing. And I will use it to sit on top of, even on a chair, or I'll put it behind my back when I'm sitting on something just to protect the spine and help me lengthen and give a little bit of lift.
mm,
And when you were talking about the setting up on the couch and adding some extra pillows or something, it also reminded me of another type of yoga, restorative yoga, that I absolutely love because it uses a ton of props, pillows, blankets, and blocks to help prop the body up. Because what happens a lot in yoga postures is we force ourselves to like get really strong and stay in them, but then the muscles tighten because we're kind of scaring them. We're creating tension in them. But by using props and letting the body sink, the muscles can actually fully relax, and create more flexibility. Even if, like, often when people come to yoga, they're like, am I supposed to be feeling it? Should I feel the pain or the tension or the stretch? But the beauty of like restorative yoga is no, it's just supposed to feel relaxing, and the muscles should be letting go, so the body can come into a state of the relaxation response and find calmness and flexibility. And so in when I teach this bolster class, I like to share also the restorative yoga postures that you can do with it. Because yes, you can use it to help bolster yourself up while you're knitting, but then also if you want to try some yoga poses, I'll offer that as well.
Oh, how much fun. And are they
Yeah.
included as part of what you're teaching for Making Zen?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh, fun.
Yeah.
How nice to know that you're doing something
Yeah.
fun, like knitting, and doing
Yeah.
something good for you, at, like the yoga at the same
Yeah.
time. It's a
Yes. Yeah.
win-win. That means you can knit more.
Yes.
And that's what we want. We want to be able
Yeah.
to knit and create for as long as possible.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, without getting sore,
Yeah.
sore body bits and achy. Talking about the
Mhm.
restorative yoga, do you do that in combination with the other sorts of yoga? Like when you say it's
Mhm.
all about muscle relaxing, is it good to do some
Mhm.
yogas which
Mhm.
is all about muscle strengthening, or
Mhm.
can you just do the restorative yoga?
You can totally just do the restorative yoga. You don't need to ever do a plank or a down dog. But it depends on what your body needs at the moment. Like I will go through phases where I only practice restorative yoga for weeks on end. And then there are days when my body needs a little bit more. I kind of look at it as following the seasons. Like, in the winter, it's a little bit more yin, a little bit more feminine, slow energy, and in the summer it's a little bit more heightened, more masculine energy. So in the winter months I might, oh, it's almost like a hibernation, just do really gentle restorative yoga. And then as the summer months come on and I have, there's daylight is longer, and I have a little bit more energy, then maybe I'll add a few extra planks or down dogs or stronger movements to my practice. But I acknowledge that every day my body is different, just like every day the weather is different, and you just kind of need to follow the ups and downs as they come. And it's not that it's a good or a bad thing. It's just the natural flow of life, as things shift and change. And it's the same with our knitting. There are days when it's easy to knit a lace pattern and your brain is focused and your body is focused. But then there are days when you really need to sit with a stockinette stitch in the round and nothing else. So just following that flow and journey.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really lovely way of describing it. And I
Hmm.
was just thinking, like
Hmm.
quite often in today's society, we're kind of taught to push through things, just do it, just,
Hmm.
it doesn't matter what it's like. But I think it's lovely to recognize, like you say, the slowing down of the season, say in winter,
Hmm.
it is more about hibernation and kind of like
Hmm.
getting cozy and comfortable, and you don't want to
Hmm.
be doing a whole lot of strenuous
Hmm.
exercises and
Yeah.
stretching and all that kind of thing. So it's
Yeah.
a really lovely message to hear you say, listen to what your body needs and
Hmm.
give it what it wants rather than,
Hmm.
and I know my mind does this all the
Yeah.
time. No,
Yeah.
no, come on, buddy, you've got to do it. And my body's like,
Yeah.
no, I don't want to. And then
Yeah.
inevitably I get sick or I hurt myself
Mhm.
because the mind just thinks the body can do whatever, but it can't.
Yeah, it can't. We're meant to follow the cycles of the moon and the seasons and allow for rest. And so lately, that's kind of how I've been scheduling myself, where it's, when I know the full moon is coming, I schedule in rest time. Or if a new moon is coming, that usually means like if there's a little bit more energy and it's good for setting new intentions, starting new projects. And I'll kind of try to follow that flow. It allows my body to have a built-in reset and not forced reset because I ended up getting sick or something.
Mm. That's lovely. So I can see a couple of things actually as soon as you were
Mhm.
describing that to me. I think you need
Yeah.
to put together a journal for
Mhm.
creating with the seasons or creating with
Yeah.
the moon so that you can
Yeah.
almost like, I don't know if justify is quite the right word for it, but you can
Hmm.
go, "Oh, okay, so maybe understand is a better way of describing it.
Yeah.
It's a full moon. That's why I feel lethargic, or that's why I don't feel
Hmm.
like doing a great deal." And then you can
Yeah.
be like, but when the new moon comes,
Hmm.
then I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And so you can kind
Yeah.
of, I guess it's maybe giving yourself permission by understanding how the moon does
Mhm.
affect ourselves. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
it. Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I'm going to have to
Yeah.
look at the moon chart in a little bit more detail and
Yeah.
work with that because quite often I'm like, okay, well, we'll just get up and it's another day kind of thing. But to
Yeah.
be a bit more in tune with the seasons and everything, it's
Yeah.
more harmonious for our knitting, isn't it? And creative.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. Oh, I love
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
circling back to
Yeah.
you said that you learnt yoga at a young
Mhm.
age, and I just
Mhm.
think that's fabulous because it was a while for yoga to become quite accepted
Mhm.
in our culture, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
It's a more
Mhm.
recent thing. Um,
Yeah.
did you have some very enlightened people in your life who suggested that you should do it, or you were just like, I've got to try this yoga, or how did that kind come to be part of your lifestyle?
We have my mother to thank for that. My mom is a lifelong knitter and yogi, and so she's who taught me how to knit and who brought me to my first yoga class. I of course was young, and I was very embarrassed by being with my mother, but it clearly struck a chord with me, and I still to this day am knitting and practicing yoga. And my mom comes on almost every one of my retreats, and she's a big fan of me. So we have her to thank, who brought it to my life. And I used to dance ballet, just not professionally or anything, but just for fun, ever like from age of 3 to like 20. And so movement had always been a big part of my life. But what I loved about the yoga was it was so judgment free. Whereas in the ballet, it was like you have to be super skinny, suck your belly in, and whatnot. Whereas the yoga, it was learning to love and accept yourself exactly where you are. And so that's why it's really stuck with me all over these years, because I think that if we can learn that compassion for ourselves, it's so much easier to offer that compassion to others.
Absolutely. That's such
Yeah.
a lovely sentiment. You
Yeah.
have to excuse me for a moment. There's a cat
Yeah.
who's eating plants.
Yes.
Isn't there? Yes, which means that she's trying to get my attention. Can you say hello?
Hello.
Hello, Bruce. No, she she's trying to tell me that she wants attention. Aren't you? She's pretty subtle.
Very subtle, but very beautiful cat.
So, Liza, we've spoken a little bit about what you're going to be teaching at the Making Zen Online Retreat, and
Mhm.
I love it for so many reasons. I love that A, it's knitting.
Mhm.
B, you're teaching intentional knitting, so the
Mhm.
mindfulness and
Mhm.
um, practices along with it, so that we're
Mhm.
looking after our bodies as well as our mind. And
Yeah.
then we can turn it into
Mhm.
something. So it's something useful. We can sit on it,
Mhm.
use it to prop our backs, and all
Yeah.
those kind of good things. And I also know
Mhm.
you've got something amazing for the VIP pass as well.
Mhm.
Would you like to
Yeah.
share?
Yes, mindful color work. So it's a class that will talk about mindfulness, but we'll also knit a color work eye pillow. So I wish you could smell through the computer, but it's filled with lavender and some lavender
Oh,
essential oils, and it's got this nice weight to it because it's got beans and rice in it. But I'll go over kind of how to mindfully approach color work, how to knit it, and then I'm also going to teach a little bit of breath work and some yoga movements to again be part of the journey, because it's not just about the stitches, but everything else that goes along the way with it. And I'm really excited about it. It's a fun project and something again that's useful at the end, because you can use it for the restorative yoga, covering your eyes and and resting and meditating and things like that. So
Mm, mm. I'm
yeah.
I'm there already. I could feel
Yeah.
it. And oh my goodness, I'm so excited. I
Yeah.
can't wait. Gosh, I wish it was going to happen tomorrow because it sounds
Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah.
Just the whole, all of it, all of these things
Yeah.
together. Would you say, for someone who is interested in participating in some of your classes, that they need to have a basic understanding of knitting, or do you talk them through the process of if you want to get started? What would you
Mhm.
suggest for that?
Yeah, I would say that a little understanding of knitting is helpful simply because it is knitting in the round, but I do take them through the cast on and how to do the knitting stitches. The bolster class is a little bit more beginner because it's just straight stockinette stitch.
Mm.
The color work class is just getting used to holding two strands of yarn at the same time, but again, I kind of I take you through the process so it's approachable. Yeah.
Mm, mm. So you could maybe say if
Hmm.
people started with the bolster
Hmm.
class, they would feel
Yeah.
confident to then move on to the color work
Yes.
with you.
Hmm.
Oh
Yep.
my
Yeah.
goodness. I think we're
Hmm.
going to have many enlightened knitters by the end of
Yes.
the retreat.
Yay. Yay.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, is there
Yep.
any tips or words of advice that you would like to share with our viewers?
Ooh, I would say that my favorite thing to offer is that a little bit goes a long way. If you're unfamiliar with yoga or meditation, this is a great way to begin because I introduced the idea of really even only 30 seconds can be a powerful way to bring mindfulness into your life. It's more about the quality, not the quantity. So you don't need to go on a retreat to do this. You don't need to spend hours practicing. A little bit each day really goes a long way.
Yeah, that's so lovely. And
Yeah.
it's such a nice entry point because I know quite often we'll put something off because we're like, oh, it takes too long, I don't have the
Mhm.
time, and all that kind of thing. Whereas if you're saying, well, actually, all you need is a couple of minutes and we can get
Yeah.
started, and that
Yeah.
can have such a good flow on effect, then
Mhm.
yeah, then you just automatically want to do more, don't you?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it eventually builds on itself. So just go step by step and start with one small thing.
Such wise words of advice. Thank you for joining me in this creative journey. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. And if you'd like to learn more about Making Zen, please check out the links below where you can find out all about the workshops and creativity, community, and all that kind of good stuff. Wishing you many happy hours of stitching.